So let me briefly introduce everyone before we start the roundtable discussion. The table is, of course, not so round as we hoped it would be. Let me start with Ivan Kolpakov, the editor-in-chief of Meduza. Of course, by nature of Ivan's profession as a journalist, it is mostly what Ivan publishes that we see, read, and know, and are so grateful for. But we are very fortunate to have Ivan join us from Washington, D.C. just for this day today to have a kind of insider's perspective and insight into what Meduza has been doing, and especially and specifically what books they've been publishing, when, why, and how. So, Ivan, thank you so much. We are also joined on Zoom by, let me start, say it in the order of people appearing in our program that is basically alphabetical. With Alexander Gavrilov. Sasha, thank you so much for joining. Alexander has recently, very recently, this is perhaps the newest publishing venture among those that we will be able to hear about today. Alexander has just recently founded a publishing house called Vidim Books. And I have to confess, I know as much about it as the audience, so we are all ears and looking forward to hearing Alexander describe, present, say words about it. We are joined by, I hope, okay, this, while it's my order, alphabetical order, but next above on the side, to Alexander on the Zoom screens is Evgeny Kogan. Zhenya, thank you so much for being here, or not here, but still being here. He is the founder of Babel Books. Babel Books is much more than just a publishing house. It's, they've brought out numerous and very important books and very kind of brave books, but they're also a franchise system, if I'm describing correctly, or a chain of bookstores, one in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, in Haifa, in Israel, but since last September, a very important presence in Berlin, Babel Books, Berlin. Zhenya might tell us more just about how this venue or tool for people to have access to not only books that they themselves publish, of course, but also books being published in Russia and by other publishers elsewhere, how they become available thereby. Maxim Osipov is the founder, hello, hi, thank you, is the founder of a journal, online journal, and a few books that he also published since the journal began, called The Fifth Wave. The title is, of course, couldn't be more evocative for us, especially that discussing as we have been the different waves, right, of diasporas and emigration across the past century or so. And the journal, I should say, is also has an English version, if I'm not mistaken. So again, let's leave it for Maxim to tell us about, and for your questions to ask. So we should also be joined, and I hope she joins us later, by Linor Goralik, who founded perhaps the first publishing venue since the war began more than 2 years ago. It's called Roar, but it stands, oh, Linor, hi, you just joined, привет. Which stands for Russian Oppositionist Art Review, a title that I know Linor has changed at some point, so she might also tell us about just what stood behind the title initially and then. It is, as much of everything else today, it's an online portal, and its kind of format and genre is something very, very curious. It's kind of unprecedented, I think, in its scope. It's also it is being translated into perhaps a dozen languages, each of the issues that come out once in 2 months. So I thought, given the hybrid format of this event, of this part of the conference, that we would start with our guests on Zoom first, and then we will turn it to Ivan to speak about Meduza and have his own presentations and slides that he has prepared. If you don't mind, I think it would be logical to give floor first to people who are remote, but so close nevertheless. Linor, would you like to start about ROAR, and then I might have a general question for everyone, and then we hand it over to Ivan. Okay, Linor, thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me and for giving me the platform to join and to talk about ROAR. I'll try to be brief. ROAR is, at the moment, and I hope forever, I hope not forever, called Resistance and Opposition Arts Review. We did start as Russian Oppositional Arts Review, but at some point, due to the fact that we have more and more Ukrainian authors who contribute to our writing in Ukrainian as well as in their own translations in Russian. We have Belarusian authors who contribute their writings. We felt less and less inclined to call the ROAR Russian Oppositional Arts Review. We do, however, publish materials that in this way or another speak against Russian war against Ukraine and against Putin's regime in general. ROAR, you've complimented us in vain when you said that we are published in a dozen languages. We are published by now, not every issue, but we are published in 6 languages. It's Russian and English, in which we publish each issue by our own efforts. And we are published in French, Polish, Japanese, and Italian. I hope I'm not forgetting anything, because that would be a shame. Due to the amazing efforts of our volunteer teams, we are a volunteer project from the beginning to the end. We don't have a single dollar in our deposits. Everything we do, from me to our most involved member of the staff, we do as volunteers. So our translators to every language are single people or people who come to us with teams of translators and say, we want to translate to this or another language. And this is absolutely fantastic. This way we are translated to the languages I have just listed. Each issue of ROAR, we are published every 2 months. Each issue of ROAR, we have published 12 by now, we are working on the 13th, is published in Russian and in English translation, and it counts usually more than 150 original works of poetry, prose, plays, essays, artworks, and sound works in different formats. I don't believe we do it. When I say it out loud, it gives me the creeps, actually, because it sounds very scary. And I don't believe our team does it. It's amazing that they do it. I do almost nothing. I only select the works and I stand aside and try not to be in my team's way. The team consists of the Russian, we call it the Ukrainian-Russian language team that publishes the main edition, and the English language team that publishes the English edition, and the Verstka, the layout team, the team that makes it all online, that publishes it all online. And somehow once in 2 months it appears. And then I write the editor's word, which consists of me thanking everyone I can name, because many people live in Russia and we don't name them, of course. But I can name some of them, some of the team members, and that's what I do. That's who we are.
Thank you so much.
That's it.
The end. The end should appear on the screen, but Zoom has not gotten that far. Thank you, Linor. Спасибо.
Thank you.
Zhenya, can I ask you to speak next, please? And if you need to, please feel free to speak Russian. I will translate.
В 2015 году мы приехали из России в Израиль, практически сразу же открыли книжный магазин.
So in 2015, we moved from Russia to Israel and opened the bookstore almost immediately.
И в 2019 мы решили создать собственное маленькое издательство и выпустили первую нашу книгу. Это была книга Леонида Добычина, которая называлась «Город Н».
And in 2019, decided to open our own small press and published our first book by Leonid Dobichin in the town of N.
В тот момент мы и как магазин, и как издательство пытались быть подальше от политических дискуссий и всего прочего, поскольку в Израиле вести политические дискуссии очень сложно, это чаще всего перерастает в...
Срач.
Да, я пытался подобрать другое слово.
Простите, как компатриот.
At that time, we tried to stay away as far away as possible from the political agenda, because having a political agenda and participate in political conversations in Israel is always inevitably grows into srach. As Linor has suggested, srach is an untranslatable word. Shitstorm, yes, but well, it's not just that. Okay.
Потом началась пандемия, и работа по понятным причинам остановилась, и книжного магазина, и издательства, мы пытались выживать.
So then the pandemic started, and for those reasons, the work of both the bookstore and the publishing house has kind of halted, and we simply tried to survive.
После того, как пандемия более или менее подошла к концу, мы снова начали издавать книги, поняли, что кроме так называемого русского модернизма, к которому мы питаем нежную любовь, есть еще и другая литература, которую мы тоже любим, в том числе современная поэзия, и мы решили, в общем, вернуться к издательской деятельности.
After the pandemic subsided, receded, we got back to publishing and realized that, of course, there are other books that we like, particularly contemporary poetry, and embarked on publishing those books.
В частности, мы издали книгу Алексея Петровича Цветкова, которая, к сожалению, оказалась последней книгой, которую он составил сам, то есть последней его прижизненной книгой.
Particularly, we published the last book by the poet Alexei Tsvetkov, which sadly turned out to be his last book during his published during his lifetime.
После того, как случилось 24 февраля, мы поняли, что политика закончилась, и, в общем, невозможно оставаться вне происходящего. И, соответственно, мы начали издавать том числе книги, которые касались напрямую происходящих событий.
When February 24, 2022 happened, we realized that politics is now no more, and it is no longer possible to stay away from I guess, politics. And Женя, повторите, пожалуйста, последнее.
Начали издавать книги, которые касаются того, что происходит.
Yeah, and we started publishing books that deal directly with what's happening.
У нас вышли две книги, два больших поэтических сборника, которые назывались «Понятые свидетели». Это сборники поэзии авторов из разных стран, русскоязычных, в том числе из Украины, которые были посвящены по полномасштабному вторжению России в Украину. Первый сборник вышел, это были стихи первых 50 дней войны, и следующий вышел, потом уже через какое-то время.
We published 2 volumes titled «Понятые свидетели», help me translate that, eyewitnesses and...
Нет, понятые — это...
It's a... Okay, yes, thank you. It's an evocative title, of course. That's why it's hard to translate. Which the first volume included, both volumes included poetry written by Russophone poets, not only from Russia, but also by those from Ukraine, the texts, once again, being written in Russian. And the first volume included poems written in during the first 50 days of the war. And then the second volume was published.
И примерно в это же время у нас вышла маленькая повесть Бориса Акунина, которая называлась «Адвокат беса», и которая была посвящена тоже событиям в России и в Украине.
And approximately around the same time, we also published a short, small book by Boris Akunin called, not Devil's Advocate, but Advocat Besa, which also touches upon essentially the same events.
Могу не сказать два слова про нее. Там на первой странице, буквально во время прямой линии, президент России Владимир Путин падает замертво, и с этого начинается действие книги.
So can't help remind you of the beginning of this book, where from the hotline, the president of the Russian Federation, Putin, while speaking, being live, falls dead. And that's what triggers the plot of the book.
Книга вышла, насколько я помню, в сентябре 22 года, 23 года, как раз накануне мобилизации. Если вы помните, Путин долго не выходил на связь, и мы подумали, что Акунин на наших глазах становится не просто большим писателем, но настоящим пророком. К сожалению, этого не случилось.
So the book came out in September 29, right on the eve of the so-called partial 23, I'm sorry, on the eve of the partial 22 mobilization. And we couldn't resist this impression that what if Akunin before our eyes became kind of the prophet, and what if this is what really explains why Putin had not been appearing and not been heard of from for a while the partial mobilization was going on.
Сегодня мы издаем как книги, которые касаются ситуации в мире, так и обычные книги, поэзию, прозу и так далее. И в том числе переводные. Мы наконец-то начали издавать книги, которые мы сами же переводим.
Today we are publishing a broader range of books on topics that are not confined to the war, including translations, which the translations is what we do ourselves sometimes and publish them.
И одна из главных книг, над которой мы сейчас работаем, это новая книга историка, украиноведа Сергея Плохия которая посвящена войне России в Украине и которую специально для нас переводит постоянный переводчик Плохи Сергей Лунин. Это человек, который живет в Харькове и переводит эту книгу буквально под бомбами. Мы переписываемся каждый день, и каждый день, в общем, не знаем, получим мы ответ от него или нет.
One of these books, and an important one, is a recent book by Sergei Plokhy, the foremost scholar of Ukrainian history. His book about the Russian war against Ukraine. It is being translated by Sergei Lunin. By Plokhy's more or less permanent translator into Russian, who is in Kharkiv and is translating the book literally while being his city being bombed. Yeah.
Наверное, на этом я закончу. Потом, если будут какие-то вопросы, с удовольствием отвечу. Спасибо.
Okay, so I will finish here, and if there are questions, I will be glad to answer them later.
May I ask my question right now? So Zhenya built almost impossible thing, a chain of independent bookstores. That's unimaginable. So how it was made?
Это сложный вопрос, поскольку до сих пор это все остается дружеской историей.
It's a difficult question to answer because so far it still remains kind of the story of friendship.
Я говорю сложный, потому что действительно эта история пока, во всяком случае, не про бизнес, а про любовь и дружбу.
I'm saying it is a complicated story because so far at least it remains not really about business, but about friendship and relationships. And
Наши друзья и в Иерусалиме, и в Хайфе, и теперь в Берлине в какой-то момент обратились к нам с просьбой помочь им сделать магазин в их городах и захотели, чтобы это был, чтобы этот магазин назывался Бабель и чтобы он входил как бы вот в самозарождающуюся сеть.
At some point, my friends in Haifa, Jerusalem, and then in Berlin asked me to help them set up a bookstore, and they wanted their respective bookstores to have the same name, Babel, and this is how they saw their books kind of forming this chain of bookstores called Babel.
Но сейчас мы ведем переговоры с людьми из нескольких городов, из нескольких стран, и наконец-то это уже не только наши друзья, но и просто какие-то незнакомые люди, поэтому, возможно, скоро мы станем прям настоящей книжной сетью, небольшой.
Now we are speaking with others, and finally it has gotten to a point when it's no longer just our friends. So that does not mean the opposite. But that is to say that at some point, perhaps soon, we will become a real venture.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me here. It's not actually just me, it's us. Next to me is my dearest friend and poet whom you all know, Yuli Gugolev, who happens to be these days in the Netherlands and who will have his talk and presentation of his works in Leiden University, where I work part-time. So let me tell you a few words about the fifth wave. When you introduced the magazine, you said it's online magazine. It's not only online, it's also it has its printed version. So here are a few volumes that I keep in my hands. So far we published 5 volumes, and the 6th volume is almost ready. The idea of starting this enterprise belongs to my Dutch publisher Van Oorschot, which is famous for its Russian series. They for decades they published Russian literature, all classics, starting from Pushkin. Not even Pushkin. They even published Derzhavin or you won't believe me, Barkov in Dutch translations. So they published many Russian authors, including me, and have special interest in Russian literature. So we started this magazine. The first issue of the magazine appeared last spring 2023, and we publish magazine quarterly, both in Russian and in English. So we split it, our efforts. I do a Russian version, and Vanor Scott is doing English version. English version appears twice a year. So we have a number of sponsors, most of them, well, international sponsors. It's Prince Bernhard Culture Fund from Netherlands. It's even Open Society Institute, Zemin Foundation, and a number of individuals who are listed in every issue of our magazine who are our sponsors. So our magazine is not and of course I need to mention Yuli, who is a member of our international board and who helps a lot with soliciting new authors and to soliciting materials for the magazine, and also reviewing the submissions that we get. And number of submissions grows every day. So our magazine is not actually socio-political. It's a literary magazine, but we, of course, the contributions are solicited from people living in Russia and abroad. Recently, I made a calculation out of 55 authors whom we published so far. 15 live in Russia, and 2 of them are being imprisoned. It's Evgeny Berkovich and Yashin, Ilya Yashin. So Berkovich was free when she sent us a collection of her poems, but she was arrested soon after that. So we have number of authors from Russophone, Russian-speaking authors from Ukraine, and also a number of authors from United States, from Israel, from Europe, from all different parts of the world, because it's obviously Russian language belongs not to the country of Russia, and definitely not to the state of Russia, but to all who writes, speaks, thinks in Russian, and writes, of course, and reads. So, of course, when I said that our magazine is not socio-political, it's only half true, because clearly all our authors they really have similar feelings about and similar desire to see Russia as a free, peace-loving country, no matter how far-fetched this wish may seem. And so in every volume of the magazine has approximately 12 to 14 12 to 14 authors, and we have 4 or 5 collections of poems. It is these days it's much easier to, I would say, to find interesting poems. Then we have a line of poets waiting to be published than prose. In our case, it's we find it much more difficult. And also some nonfiction, lectures, interviews. So that what we have in every issue. So yes, our readers, yeah, we have the full version of the magazine online. This is true, and everyone in Russia or elsewhere can read the magazine in full. And those who like to buy the magazine, they can do it throughout our website, and we print. It's print on demand again, print on demand fashion. So they would receive the magazine in 2 or 3 weeks after the order. Our buyers are mostly Slavists. Russians do not really buy magazines these days, but that's how it is. But there are almost 1,500 Slavic departments worldwide, so we have a number of people buying our magazine as well for their libraries or for themselves or for their Russian language departments, etc. So this is mainly it.
Thank you so much, Maxim. I'm glad there are so many departments. And finally on Zoom, Alexander Gavrilov, please.
Thank you very much. So I spent some time choosing what to apologize for speaking Russian for my terrible English, and I choose the latter. So Vidim Books is very, very new publishing house. We actually published our first 2 books a little more than a month ago. These 2 titles are The Diary of Falling Down by Dmitry Glukhovsky and Status Free by Sergei Nikolaevich. So these 2 books are mostly they are connected with the common theme. So Diary of Falling Down is a collection of journal columns by magazine columns by Dmitry Glukhovsky, collected for 15 years. And when we put this text together, we just realized that it's the history of so falling down of modern Russia, from Bolotnaya Square, from the protests in Moscow after the I don't know, the 3rd, 4th re-election of Vladimir Putin, and every text today needs to be understandable. It's necessary. It asks for footnotes and commentary from editor and from author. And so that strange book, so it's just a collection of short articles and collection of commentaries. And so finally, we get a very, very strange but interesting book about what's going on, how we fall down to this point, to the war, to the death of civil society in Russia. And the other book, Status Free, Status Свободен, is about the artists who decide to leave Russia after the beginning of a war, and just because they want to be free. So these two books are just first, and in our portfolio we have some memoirs, some fine fiction books, even two graphic books. I learned in a bad way not to talk much about plans, losing several interesting titles after bringing them up in a conversation with colleagues. To be fair, it should be said that only one publishing house behaves this way, but it is what it is. So I want to say two more, want to bring up two more ideas. First, we decide from our first day of not having books, but building this publishing house, we decide that we are not only publishing house, we are a distributor for every independent publishing houses abroad of Russia. Because so we will publish till the end of this year, maybe, I don't know, 15 titles. Our colleagues will publish maybe 3 or 4. And every one of us is not very interesting for international book chains, for even Amazon or something else, but altogether we are understandable entity. And the last thing I want to say is I want to join Georgy. He told that there is no such thing as samizdat, tamizdat, samizdat, and so on. Because, you know, for now, we are really aiming, and I think that it's possible to bring our books into Russia. That's very, very new situation and very special. So, of course, Tamizdat books in Soviet time moved into Soviet Union, but you know, it was single issues, single books. For now, I think that is possible to even sell, I don't know, hundreds or maybe thousands in Russia. That's because we still connected via internet, via personal connections. It's absolutely new situation if we can compare it with the original Tamizdat situation. Oh, the very last, Maxim, I'm buying your magazine. I'm not a slavist. I can swear.
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me here. It's great pleasure to be here and to talk at the same panel with such experienced and prominent speakers. And I must confess right away that it is really weird for me to talk in the room like that, because normally I speak with journalists, among editors, among media people, and I never had a chance to participate in such conference like that. So I kind of feel as an imposter, I guess. And of course, it is always very weird when any media organization starts book publishing. You know that. And I know that many of you normally feel really weird when people from media start book publishing. So please don't throw your rotten tomatoes in me, or throw your rotten tomatoes if you have some tomatoes with you. I have a presentation. Unfortunately, it's very long, but I'll try to speak as quick as possible. Does it work? Super, thanks. Can you hear me like that? Because I am too tall for this microphone. Yeah, sorry. So Meduza, I think some of you heard of Meduza. Meduza is currently the largest independent media organization that still exists on this earth. We started 10 years ago in exile in Riga, Latvia, and we still remain there. Now, 10 years later, we are complete criminals in Russia. We were labeled as a foreign agents. We were labeled as an undesirable organization, and we are now expecting to become an extremist community, I guess, something like that. What is really cool, and I think what is really important is the fact that we still have readers in Russia. We still have millions of readers in Russia. And basically, the main thing we're trying to achieve right now, we are trying to jump over the new Iron Curtain. Every good independent media organization in Russia is blocked. Russia is very effective in this regard. Unfortunately, Meduza is also blocked in Russia, but we have our famous mobile application that can bypass censorship, and we also have a number of different tools to actually bypass censorship. It's not super interesting for the book people, I think, but still. Our business model was crushed a couple times. Before we were labeled as a foreign agent, we were pretty classical media organization with the advertising business model. When we were labeled as a foreign agent in 2021, we lost all our advertisers in just 1 week. It was really painful. And then we started a crowdfunding campaign, which I think was one of the biggest crowdfunding campaigns in contemporary history of Russia. But then the war started in 2022, and our crowdfunding campaign was crushed by Western sanctions, because it is impossible now to get money transfers from Russia to Europe, where we are based. So last 2 years, we are existing in this survival mode, which means that we had to reconsider our business model, so-called business model, financial model. Again, we started an international crowdfunding campaign. Meduza is currently supported by a number of people around the world. We, of course, trying to fundraise as hell, and I think for many people in this room, it is a very obvious thing to do. For us, it is less obvious, but this is what we have to do every day. And also, since we are the people with a business background, we trying to find new sources of money for the media we are running. I'm not gonna stop here for a while. You know everything yourself. This is like, the current situation is really bad. In terms of censorship, Russia is very effective. Russia, everything is blocked. They blocked almost 1 million websites since the beginning of the invasion in Ukraine. And they are very effective. They can also block huge platforms such as Facebook or Instagram. They can slow down several platforms such as Twitter. They can also block technologies that were designed specifically for the cyber authoritarian countries, such as, special VPNs that normally promote themselves as as bulletproof technologies. They don't work in Russia anymore. And unfortunately, now it's not only about journalism, it is also about books. There is a real censorship on the book market right now. In every, in every sphere you can imagine, there are blacklists of authors. Well, you know that. You know everything. So that's why, there was a moment a couple of years ago when we thought that maybe we should start publishing our own books. Like, we have grounds for that. We have an audience, and we still have one. We have an efficient distribution channel. It means that apart from many other organizations, we can distribute information within Russia. There are people in Russia that have an access to Meduza, and they don't need, by the way, they don't need to use VPNs to have this access. And of course, there is a big circle of authors around Meduza and around our friends, and many of our journalists are authors themselves. So it's actually a good, probably it's a good place to start book publishing. And also, book publishing can help us to, solve some problems we actually have right now. You can imagine, you've heard this thing as news avoidance, right? You know about news avoidance. You can't even imagine how strong it is and how big it is now in Russia. People just don't want to consume news. This is a problem we are facing right now. The problem is not even about the distribution of the information, but the demand of people on independent information. So books is a very good way to actually promote our media part, our journalistic part. Of course, we feel that people, specifically in Russia, but also for just, Russian-speaking, Russian-thinking people around the globe, they need some sort of moral, psychological support right now. And books is probably one of the few ways to support people. And as I already mentioned, we have problem. We need money. And we all know that book publishing is not a great business, but still it can provide some additional money. And this is also an important background we are trying to keep in mind. A lot of people, a lot of Russians and Ukrainians as well, that normally speak Russian in their everyday life, read Russian, they left the country. It means that there is it's not a real market, of course, but there is an audience outside of Russia, and they probably have demand on independent literature, and they probably have some money. Because of course, if we, speaking about Russia, the most rich, educated, privileged people left the country, and they have resources. And also, we see how this literary world changes right now, because a lot of Western authors, international authors, they don't want to be published in Russia anymore, but they don't want to be cut off, the language, the audience. So this is a big problem for many authors, particularly here in the US, to be published in Russia, to keep, being published in Russian. But it also creates some kind of an opportunity for us, for all independent Russian-speaking publishers that are based now outside of the country. It works really strange. It works really weird. So we print real books. It's also like people in book world, they don't like when we say like real books or physical books. But yes, we are printing physical books in Latvia, and we are shipping these books globally, more or less. It's a big problem to ship these books here in the US. There is a problem, that it's a challenge for us, but I think we will resolve this problem in the nearest future. So we sell these books, basically. And at the same time, we distribute these books for free through our app in Russia, in Ukraine, and anywhere. So you can actually read any book that was published in Meduza, by Meduza, can be read in our app for free. And it actually works. Why does it work? Because people buy these books. When they buy these books, they understand that this is a way to support Meduza as well. You buy in a book, the book is good. You support the author, but also you support the media. And it creates some sort of circle of users. I already said that there is a big fundamental problem for media everywhere, but especially in Russia, news avoidance. So people, if you can read this book in an app, you go and you download this app. You download this app, you get not only a book, you also get some independent news. And the opposite, and vice versa. So you can be a normal news consumer, and at some point you realize that you are reading Elena Kostyuchenko's book, for example. Right now we are thinking about, we are actually launching our own internet store to ship our books in more efficient way. But unfortunately, when Navalny was murdered, Meduza, the biggest cyber attack on Meduza has started, and now we are still under this attack. This is probably like the biggest cyber attack in our history. So we would launch this store much quicker if not this cyber attack. Okay, let's talk about books. Not so many books so far, but something. You had, I think, wonderful keynote, Elena's keynote, and it was a big honor and pleasure for us to be Elena's publisher. And this is our first book, and it is actually a bestseller. If we can say this word about books that were published abroad after the beginning of the war, this book is like we are now publishing 5th circulation, printing, yeah. It's like it has 5th printing right now. And it was published 6 months ago, right? Not very long. This is this is our second book. Mikhail Zygar is actually, he works here in CUNY, and he wanted to be here today, and he says hi to you guys. This is another book about Ukraine, actually. I don't know, I don't need to translate it, but this is like this. Mikhail, he writes writes books about history, and this book is dedicated to Russian perception of Ukraine and how this perception actually shaped the events of 2022. Another prominent Russian journalist, Katerina Gordeeva, she used to work for Meduza as a special reporter. And this is a book about refugees Again, Ukraine. Ukraine is probably our main topic, and I think that it's obvious because we all trying to process this major and tragic event, and still, and we have to publish a lot of books to actually understand it. Our recent book, this is a book about Evgeny Prigozhin and his coup and his biography, and about this company of mercenaries that became such a huge phenomena in contemporary Russia. And it is also written by journalists. These journalists are not connected with Meduza. They work for other media organizations. But it is really cool that this book was also published in a collaboration. We do a lot of collaborations. We're trying to be as open as possible in this industry. This particular one was published together with this new foundation, Straightforward Foundation. It was also launched by Russian publishers and journalists and editors. And this organization supports independent nonfiction. And this is their first project as well. And of course, digital releases. Some books, we publish some books in print. We publish some books only in digital. And we have more, collaborations here. This is a very important, another important autofiction book that was written by famous Russian feminist Dasha Sirenko, and it was first published in the publishing house Babel. And now it is available digitally in our app. This book, this is a famous book. And what is important about this book, Alexei Navalny, actually, he read this book when he was in prison. And he admired Sharansky. And they actually wrote letters to each other. And now these letters are also separately published. This is a very interesting reading. And so this one was published when Navalny was already murdered in prison. Again, probably as a matter of support for those who are in grief. Another collaboration, now it is a collaboration with Freedom Letters, and this book was written by an anonymous author that still lives, still remains in Russia. And this author describes the reality one observes. And we are preparing now, I think, around 10 new books. And I can announce a couple of them. Great author, very important for Russian-speaking people. And our first foreign author, Jonathan Littell. This is actually a nonfiction. It's not fiction. It's a nonfiction. He traveled across Ukraine during the invasion, and he traveled across the places that are extremely important for the historical memory, I would say. Babin Yar, Bucha, that kind of places that now contain like 2 layers of events, not only events, from the 20th century, but also recent events. This is a great book. It was already published in French. I think it was already published in English, and this is like, it's the first Russian edition. This is a book about Alexei Navalny, and we have a photo editor in our team. His name is Evgeny Feldman. He also a photographer, and he was lucky enough to be a person who actually documented Navalny's presidential campaign several years ago. And he has an absolutely unique photo archive. So when Navalny was murdered, we decided to publish this book. We actually spoke with Evgeny about this book for a while, but when everything happened, we realized that we need to do it as quickly as possible. We are about to, start our fiction line, which is very difficult for us as media people. We feel so self-assured when we are, dealing with the nonfiction. It is way harder to formulate your editorial strategy when you speak about fiction. We'll see. And of course, it will be nice to hear your thoughts about our fiction line as well. I'm not gonna say how much money we made so far, but we did. So we made some money, and this is probably the most important part. I know that book publishing is a very volatile business, or not business at all for many organizations. But for us, it's very important. It's vital. Since 2021, when we were labeled as a foreign agents, these are the first real money we earned ourselves. This is not it's not crowdfunding. It's not like money for free. It's not money for just, us being nice people that doing something important or not super nice. These are real money. And it's really nice, it's really important to have like real money in your pocket when you're doing journalism. It makes you more independent, not less independent. It makes you more independent. The circulation probably is not as high as it could be, but we are talking about this new world, and we are shipping our books abroad. So now 23,000, I think it was like 1 month ago. Now it's more. So in terms of, in comparison with Russian circulations, of course, it's very small. It's very little. You can't compare it with top hits in Russia before the war. Of course, it's nothing. But we observing now the creation of this new market, and it's very interesting. Will it survive? Does it have any money that can support independent book publishing? And what is more important for us as media people? Circulations, it's very good, but the numbers online are way more important for us. So we have now 8 books digitally released, and it's not like the most fresh numbers. What I can say that people read our books. They 33% reading rate. It means that every third person that opens a book through our app normally finishes this book. I don't know. It doesn't often happen with me. And this is just, some numbers. I'm not going to explain a lot, but you can see that they are huge and they're plus, they are positive. It means that the book publishing actually boosts our readership. It really works as a tool to actually, to resolve the problem with news avoidance. Thank you.
Maybe there are questions of one publisher to the other, or vice versa. So also, of course, please feel free to ask each other questions. We would be all very curious to hear kind of the way it works, this thought of publishing books today from the inside. And if you don't hear the question, please tell me, I will repeat it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for extremely interesting session. It's not exactly a question, it's a comment on the very first presentation by Georgi Urushadze, because one little piece kind of disappeared in English. He mentioned that he tried to publish something in translation, and that was my project. That's a book about acts of resistance written by the person who is very well known, Western person who worked for human rights for many years and wrote the book, which was translated by me into Russian. Too late to publish it in Russian, after the 14 basically. And Georgi and the author and me were trying to get rights from an American publisher and failed. I just want that to be voiced loudly in this audience, and if anyone knows how to work with American publishers, I will be happy to talk to that person, because I still think it should be done. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. It is indeed an important point, because it's not, well, translation rights is quite an issue.
It's a very difficult issue, and I'm sure, I'm very happy to see that some translating rights were acquired by this publisher, but it's a real problem.
Thank you.
We will very soon have, because I don't see any other development we would need to expand into translations. Thank you very much.
I don't have a specific question to any publisher separately, but what has been on my mind listening to your descriptions of what you do today, and again looking at the poster of our conference, which comes from a book published in the 70s by the legendary Ardis publishers, a film about which we're about to see later today. It comes from Lev Kopylev's «Хранить вечно», to be preserved forever, which, as far as I know, became a bestseller, right? And it's a topic that, of course, Meduza is preoccupied with, as well as other publishing ventures. It's the war. In Kopylev's case, it was 1945 in Berlin, but what I wanted to ask you maybe to comment a bit more about is the fact that this was also a non-fiction. So what is the role? I mean, is there any? Can a novel become a bestseller in today's climate, given the repertoires of today's publishers? So journalism, of course, diaries, Facebook posts, essays, perhaps, yeah, but it hasn't come up, right? A work of fiction has not come up so far, something that would be biggest kind of in terms of sales. If you have any thoughts about this?
I think that, yes, why not? Of course, it will happen. It will happen, I think, a lot of people, what we observe right now as publishers, it's really like answering this question makes me feel even more imposter than I am, than I already am. But we observe a lot of good texts at the moment, fiction texts that trying to actually, comprehend what's going on with us and in our part of the world. And we now have 4 texts, fiction texts that we are going to publish, and they all work with the agenda. I don't want to say this word, this is not the right word to say probably, but they all trying to process the drama that, happens with us, with Russian-speaking people. So yes, I think that the answer is simple and short, yes.
Thank you. So maybe Linor, if your question.
My question is to Ivan. Vanichka, what is more lucrative now? The ones you sell as physical ones, or the ones that you sell through the app?
Привет, очень рад тебя видеть. Of course, internet, the digital is way more popular than the physical part. But the physical part is very important for us because for the very first time throughout many years, we are doing something physical. It's very nice. For internet people, it's really nice to do something like that, like physical, like tactile.
I
Like,
feel like real people, like.
yeah. Like you start living again, not only as a virtual personality. But of course, in terms of current situation, the digital numbers are even more vital because they represent the demand from people who are still based inside the country, and this is the majority of people. The majority of people, they are there. Yeah. So yeah, I would say 20 times. We have 20 times more so-called circulation on internet than in the real world.
Then maybe I have an idea and we need to talk.
Let's talk.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you so much to all the panelists for, my mad respect and admiration to all of you. My question is for Ivan, and well, first of all, I just wanted to say that I think I've been just taking the website for granted, Meduza's website, and when you said that that you've been under this extraordinary cyber attack, I mean, of course, right? But I've never even thought about that invisible part of what you do, and so again, thank you so much. It really is a vital resource. The question that I want to ask has less maybe to do with the intricacies of publication, but you mentioned the word censorship, and you said that pretty much that there is real censorship in Russia today. Since some of us in the audience are academics and historians in ways in which we verify things empirically, so there isn't technically speaking, I'm just wondering, when you say that there is real censorship in Russia, what do you mean? Because if we take, for example, the so-called gay propaganda law, there isn't a list of books that are not allowed to be kept in the libraries or published, etc. So everything boils down to self-censorship of some kind. And so if you could comment on, again, what do you mean by censorship? Because we don't have the Glavlit, right?
Well, there is an academic discussion about Russian censorship. Is it actually a censorship or not? In my opinion, it's just the variation of censorship. Of course, there is no special committee, how to say it? Committee, right? That decides what kind of, content can be published, broadcasted, whatsoever. But there are so many instruments to actually do it without, making such. This censorship works much better, much more effective. They don't need to, to read everything through. They are creating red lines, very popular phrase in Russian and in Russian official rhetoric. Like they are creating red lines. For example, now there is this anti-LGBTQ plus legislation in Russia. Well, to be honest, it's really bad. It is much worse than people think. From one side, they officially, let's talk about the harder part. The harder part is that, the government said there is a big part of our society and you can do with them whatever you want. You can take their business. You can take their positions in the universities, in the corporations, everywhere. You can, you can compete each other using it as an instrument. The lighter part of the legislation is the censorship, right? They are, you know, you can't publish a lot of books in Russia anymore. Even the whole institutions, they have to shut down their operations because they were focused on LGBTQ plus topics, right? And they are all under huge threat. So you can't publish, you can't sell, you can't keep that kind of literature in the libraries. So it looks like, of course, they don't do it like before it was published. They do it, it is post-censor thing. But I think like this academic discussion is irrelevant. This is just a variation of censorship. And it's way harder than it used to be in, you know, authoritarian regimes or totalitarian regimes of 20th century. It is way more tough, and it comes to every house, to every gadget, you know, it controls everything. It's really scary, and we can't even understand entirely at the moment how huge it is. But it's huge. It's a big phenomenon, that's for sure.
Okay, hi, thank you for your talk. First, I would like to say hi to Yulik Gugolev. Yulik, привет, мне очень приятно тебя видеть. Second, yesterday, I'm asking question because I already heard about censorship. Yesterday, I went to independent art fair. And there was a conference about censorship, but here in the United States. And it's, of course, there are different problems, but some people here feeling that it's the money, funding is the one form of the censorship. Do you feel that your lack of funding and money also could be considered as some kind of censorship?
Thank
or
you.
You differently, yes.
They're different questions. Okay, thank you very much for your presentations. They were fascinating. So I have a maybe trivial and perhaps a nostalgic question. And this is a question about physical books, about paper books, about book size and paper type. Because I'm thinking about books of the 70s and the 80s Tamizdat books, you know, like the gulags that everybody knows, the little ones that you can put in your pocket, right? And smuggle potentially, right? And the same thing with Petropol books in Berlin in the early 20s. So my question is, are you thinking, which are also cheaper to mail, right? That also makes a big difference. So my question is, are you thinking in terms of format innovations that might make books more, I don't know, transferable, more difficult to control?
Alexander?
Yes, but, but I think my answer will be Ivan's answer. Because, you know, electronic books, e-books, are that books which is very handle to hide in pocket and to hide from Tavarish Mayor. So I think for now every one of us publish physical books and e-books. Physical books are for the bookshelf and e-books for the fast reading, for the hiding, for the having every time with the reader. I think that your question is very, very to the point of our mission. But yes, new formats are crucial.
It's so ironic that online editions have become what used to be called Bible paper and pocket editions.
Yeah, well, the answer is, I can only add that, you know, the electronic book is the best way to distribute a book right now. So that's why you can read these books for free in our app. And we made this decision like specifically, and we're trying to communicate it with the book distributors we working with, that we don't want our books to be our physical books to be distributed in Russia, because it puts everyone at risk, and probably someone will be detained, some courier, right, with a book, and this person will be detained, imprisoned, etc. We don't want that. We don't want that because it is so much easier to actually, you know, throw it in Russia in digital. It is absolutely safe.
All right, and just last question, I think the hand was there first. Elindea, please.
Hi, I have a question about whether the Russian world is seeing what's happening in the American world with books, distribution, and publicity. I'm a former publisher of Russian and American books. What has happened here is kind of funny. There are influencers on Instagram and on YouTube, and especially TikTok, and they are book lovers. And one of my friends did a translation of Dostoevsky, which sold the usual 1,000 copies a year, White Nights. And this book lover heard about White Nights, read it, showed it to his audience very briefly, and said, "This is an amazing book." The publisher got 9,000 orders the next week. So I started following this guy, and then I found there were 20 others like it. And of course, in Russia, we see the power of YouTube. Maria Pevchik's Предатели, I give you that as an example. Are you guys finding a way to reach your audience with PR on YouTube or on any of these other methods?
Well, it's a tough, actually it is more tough question than many people think for us, because we also have the capacity, we have some capacity to promote our books as a media organization, right? So we are in a better position than many other publishers. When we publish something, we have a lot of channels to actually promote a book we are publishing. And it is not fair in many ways, I guess, because, you know, we have this resource, other publishers don't. But we trying to, how we trying to behave, we trying to be as, you know, responsible as possible when we choosing something, what we want to publish, and that's all. But in other regards, no, we don't want to use any, you know, special platforms, channels to additionally promote our books. We have everything we need to promote our books. And the main thing we have right now is actually our app. Because people in Russia, so if you live in Russia, if you want to read books that can't be published in the country, you can just download this app and you have these books right away. And it promotes itself, of course. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do anything. Of course, we have to do a lot of stuff, you know, everyday stuff to promote it, but still, it works like that. And it works so far, because we don't know what will happen next. Maybe tomorrow they will manage to destroy our app in the country and everything will collapse. It may also happen, unfortunately. So, yeah. Yeah.
And she would just read a book and give her a review. And you can't force it. All you can do is send her the book. And if she likes it, she does.
I agree. I mean, this is a very interesting conversation, I would say. if we would be in a normal, market situation, of course, we would use these channels as much as possible. But, every day can be the last day. We understand, we are waking up and we're thinking, okay, we can still survive. We can still print someone, earn some money, distribute this stuff in Russia. Let's do it. Tomorrow, maybe everything will over. Unfortunately, it happened so many times with Russia recently.
Thank you, Linor, and unfortunately after this we will have to wrap up this part.
Thank you. I'm not a publisher of books, so it might look strange that I'm trying to answer this question, but I am speaking now as a marketing consultant. And the question that was asked is very dear to my heart. I see now one more and one after that independent Russian publishing houses struggling and coming up to struggle for publishing resources. And Alexander Gavrilov spoke right now that they want to act as a publishing powerhouse from the point of view of distribution. And I keep thinking that this is probably not the only problems that they are going to face. If right now publishing houses, independent publishing houses abroad from Russia need cooperation on something, is the efforts on communications. Because no one of them, I'm afraid, is able to survive with their own marketing resources. I think that there might be a good idea to work together somehow on promoting a concept of another kind of reading, on another kind of literature. And maybe, I know how idiotic it sounds saying to publishing houses cooperate on marketing, but I don't believe that any single one of them can afford not to do this. So maybe we all need to think about it, and it might be a question of survival, especially thinking about the fact that your major audience will be in Russia, you will be outside Russia, and the embryonic cord will not be that well connected. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Linor, for saying this, because, of course, this was kind of behind the idea of this roundtable and the purpose of bringing contemporary publishers who we have all hopes for today together into a dialogue. Thank you so much, everybody on the screen, behind the table here.
Let me say the last word.
Please.
Only one. It's a great honor to be in one audience, even virtually, with Elendea Profer, who is a guiding star for every one of us. Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
She just stepped out, but I will make sure to pass it on to her later tonight when we see a film and have a conversation with her. Once again, Ivan, thank you. Thank you, Sasha, Zhenya, Maxim, Linor, and